Good evening, my fellow Americans. This is the 17th of July edition of A Quiet Rage. Just right off the bat, it amazes me, truly, the lack of awareness and that MAGA seems to have about the double standard. Let's just show you real quick what I'm talking about. Why I bring this up. Here's just yesterday, I believe it was, our president, the president of these United States, Donald Trump, said in the Oval Office, "I was surprised when Jerome Powell was appointed as chairman of the Federal Reserve." Having stood next to Jerome Powell just a few years ago and said it is my honor to announce my nomination of Jerome Powell to be the next Fed chair. Why do I bring this up? How is this a double standard? Well, if you remember, it was during the 2024 campaign that a great many MAGA were all up in arms about how can you Democrats stomach the fact that our president, Joe Biden, is clearly in mental decline, and certainly he was. He has a stutter, and it was getting worse. And his performance in the one debate with Trump was truly a wake-up call. It could no longer be hidden by the people around him, and rightly, he stepped off the stage, literally and figuratively, not long after, and Kamala Harris became the nominee for the Democratic Party. I, for one, wish he would have done that sooner. Wish that he would have kept to running just serving one term. And I wish that the Democratic Party could have had a healthy primary. That's not what happened. Now, and I take issue also with, there's a fair number of centrists, the politically homeless, which is we might talk about that later. That's just, I take issue with that statement or phrase, whatever you want to call it, being politically homeless. But anyway, there were a fair number of centrists who made noises about not voting for Biden because of his clear mental decline. Well, did you then vote for Harris, who clearly was not mentally declining, despite the fact that we've known for a great long while that, I mean, this Jerome Powell thing is not the first indication by a damn sight that Trump is mentally and physically declining. And oh, by the way, he was diagnosed. They just announced today that he was diagnosed with a what was it called? A vein condition that's causing his legs to swell. The fact that we are actually finally getting some honest medical information out of the Trump White House is interesting. I'm not sure what to make of that. I'm kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop there, because historically, famously, the Trump White House has not been honest about his, well, anything. His height, his weight, his blood pressure, his... This is not a healthy man. But anyway, if you would have... I feel perfectly comfortable, perfectly justified in calling out the double standard of anybody that ever said you can't vote for Joe Biden because he's mentally in decline, and then either voted for Trump or voted for anybody other than Kamala Harris, because that's hypocritical. And if you had asked me in 2024, or even before, should Biden be running, I would have said no. I don't think he should. He should be a one-term president. He should step off the stage. He certainly could have thrown his support behind Kamala Harris, or been let the process, let a primary process just go its own way. But anyway, I would have told you that even after that disastrous debate performance by President Biden, I still would have voted for Biden. And I have no problem looking you straight in the camera and telling you that. Because Joe Biden at his worst is still better than Trump at his best. Because Trump is a laundry list of terrible things, which he's a malignant narcissist, he's a sexist pig, he's a rapist, he's a sexual assaulter multiple times. Again, why don't we have the Epstein files? Because his name is in this. We knew this before Elon Musk went on his crash out claiming that Trump's name was in there. We knew this. This is not a surprise. Trump's a terrible person. Joe Biden has his flaws. Yes. Joe Biden was not my first choice. He wasn't my first choice in 2020. Kamala Harris was. But he's who got the nomination for the Democratic Party. So he's who I was going to vote for. Not because of some slavish, cultish devotion to Joe Biden, but because when you have to vote for the lesser of two evils, you fucking vote for the lesser of two evils. You don't complain about the situation. You vote for the lesser of two evils. Again, a politician is not a taxi cab that's going to take you exactly where you want to go. A politician is a bus that follows a particular route, and you're going to have to do the last leg of the trip on foot yourself. They're going to get you close. They're not going to get you all the way. They're not going to get you exactly what you want. Speaking of getting exactly what you want, the Senate late last night, I believe it was, voted to accept a rescission package, it's a difficult word to say, that will take back approximately $9 billion that Congress had already allocated. Duly elected senators and representatives had approved this funding. $7.9 billion of it to go to foreign aid. And we can have that conversation at a later date. But Congress, duly elected, approved all this stuff. And now we're changing our mind. I'm not saying that Congress should never change their mind. But they should change their mind on their own, not at the behest of a fucking wannabe dictator, who, again, keeps having to have his vice president come in there and break ties in the Senate. If he had such a mandate, which I disagree with the president's claim that he has a mandate to do whatever the fuck he wants. If he had such a mandate, why is he having such trouble getting things through Congress? Why does he have to send J.D. Vance down there to cast a tie-breaking vote? Just curious. But anyway. So, we don't want to spend money overseas. We don't want to spend money on other people. Okay. Again, a conversation we can have at a later date, perhaps. But about $1 billion that they're taking back, if this, so the bill now goes back to the House for them to vote on the Senate version. It's probably going to pass. Who knows? About $1 billion goes to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, National Public Radio, NPR, and the Public Broadcasting System, PBS. I've had this conversation before. I don't know if we've talked about it here. But the point that needs to be made here is that the objection by the president, by Republicans, and you can, I mean, let's see. There was one in particular. Ted Cruz, what did he say about it? He said, well, let's see. Marjorie Taylor Greene said you can pay for hate on your own. You can pay your own dime to hate us. We believe that you can all hate us on your own dime. Yeah, that's what Marjorie Taylor Greene said. Where's the Ted Cruz? I'm just scrolling here for a minute. John Thune, Senate Majority Leader, said, noting that the U.S. is $36 trillion in debt, said, quote, what we are talking about here is 0.1% of all federal spending, but it's a step in the right direction. Yeah. Sure. And that's my own editorial, is the yeah, sure. That's the end of the quote. Step in the right direction. Senator Ted Cruz speaking against a motion to, because the senators were discussing whether they were going to keep these cuts to public broadcasting. Democratic Senator Tammy Baldwin had put forth a measure to try or an amendment to try and get that funding back. And Ted Cruz responded that, quote, or that public broadcasting, quote, has long been overtaken by partisan activities, plain and simple, unquote. And continued, quote, NPR and PBS have revealed their left-wing bias time and time again. If you want to watch the left-wing propaganda, turn on NBC, but the taxpayers should not be forced to subsidize it. End quote. Well, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, NPR and PBS, receive about 1% of their funding from the federal government. So they're going to... It's not... Yeah, it's a lot of money. But the American taxpayer doesn't get to decide what their taxes go to. My tax dollars go to the federal government, and then the federal government, the representatives, the senators that I have elected, they decide how to disperse those funds. That's how this system works. I don't want my tax dollars funding Secret Service details to golfing outings for this current president at the rate at which he golfs. But I don't get a say in that. It's just the way it is. So, and again, it's the news programs that most people take issue with. I actually did get into an argument on Facebook, the best place to have an argument with someone I went to high school with about how Sesame Street. She took issue that Sesame Street is too. It is pushing a far left agenda, that inclusion has gone too far, and made some other claims that she couldn't substantiate or back up, that whatever. I don't. If you've got a problem with the diversity that you see on Sesame Street, I got bad news for you. You're a bad person. That's all there is to it. You are a shitty person if Sesame Street bugs you. Just, you gotta sit and marinate in that. Sorry. The point is, the objection by this president and his party, his cult, against public broadcasting and NPR is not a fiscal objection. They're not mad about the money. They're mad about the objection is ideological. Republicans who do shitty things, like our president, don't get good coverage, don't get favorable coverage by NPR, by the news programs on public broadcasting. I don't know, try maybe not being a shitty person, and then the left won't say shitty things about you. We won't say true things about you. Or we will, but the true things won't be shitty because you're not a shitty person. Again, it's 1%. Is it a big deal in the grand scheme of things? Actually, yes. Because while it's $1 billion, and I don't know over what time period, because it's not $1 billion just today. It's $1 billion over probably the next 5 years or whatever, maybe 10 years, whatever it may be. So when you spread it out, it's not as much, and you get more return. Anyway, the point is, who's this going to affect the most? It's going to affect the small NPR and PBS stations in rural communities, in red states, probably, in red areas of the country, farming communities, ranching communities, where the population density is lower. So there's just fewer people to listen and fewer people to fund these on their own. Like, my local station here in Virginia, Southern Virginia, covers the 7 cities. There's a huge population here. There's a lot of people that listen to public radio, and there's a lot of people that participate in fundraising. In more rural communities, that's not necessarily the case. So that's where that funding is more likely to go. The government funding is more likely to go to the communities that need it the most, because they need it the most. So it's the underserved that are going to suffer from this. It's the small stations that are going to have to potentially shut down because of this funding. Hopefully NPR and PBS can absorb that and keep on trucking and keep these small local stations open. Hopefully. But they're still a business. They still have to pay their employees and pay their maintenance fees and, keep towers transmitting. They have to pay the electric bill. So, and obviously, if PBS and NPR have to make cuts, it just makes good business sense to cut those small stations anyway because they serve fewer people. And that sucks. That sucks. Because at its core, government and government funding is supposed to do for us what we cannot necessarily do for ourselves. National defense being one of those things. Funding research, funding public broadcasting. These are things that government is good at doing. Taking money that wouldn't otherwise make good business sense and giving it to small communities, small stations, so that they can continue operating and providing a very important service to local communities. Because if you think about it, if a community is small enough that it can't support an NPR station, there's going to come a time when it can't support just a regular terrestrial radio station either, necessarily. So when natural disasters strike and there's not good cell phone service, you may not have a radio station to tune into to get emergency broadcasts. Do you get what I'm saying here? This is cutting off your nose to spite your face. That's what this is. And Republicans have been trying for years to take money away from public broadcasting. They're finally going to succeed, and it's very sad. It's very unfortunate. So it occurred to me this evening as I was considering if I was going to make an episode and what I was going to be about. I think we've kind of settled into, Trump's been in office now for January. Yeah, going on 6 months now. 6-7 months. I think we're kind of starting to level out a little bit. There's still going to be dumb shit happening. There's still going to be controversies, obviously. But I think if I'm going to keep doing this, I need to have more direction. I need to spend more than just an evening or an afternoon deciding, and maybe actually write something out a little more, have a little more on paper about what I'm going to say, so that I don't have those moments after I've uploaded where I'm like, oh yeah, I was going to say that brilliant thing, and then I didn't, because I didn't write it down. Anyway, so what I think I'm going to move towards is doing maybe more of a long-form deep dive on a particular subject. And assign myself that subject by Monday or Tuesday. That way I've got a few days to really dig in, do some research, and have a well-formed thought to present. So that I think that's going to be what I'm going to do going forward. I owe you a live episode too. It's been a little bit since we've done one of those. So we'll maybe in a couple weeks we'll have one of those. Anyway, if there's a topic or a question that you'd like me to address in more of a long form, deep dive sort of a format, then go ahead and put it in the comments. And if you can't think of one now, next video, put it in the comments, whatever. This is an open invitation. If there's something you want me to address, something, a deep dive you want me to do, something that you're curious about, that you'd like to hear my take on, then go ahead and put it in the comments. Let me know. I'm considering getting a P.O. box so that if you see something in the wild, a shirt like this, that that you'd like to send me, or something to go on the desk in the background, that you can send to me, that would be a way to safely do that. So if that's something that you're interested in, then respond in the comments. Yes, let's get a P.O. box. Let me know. Because I'm not going to do it. It's going to cost me money, which is, it's like $100 a year or something like that. It's nothing crazy. But if I'm going to do it, I'm going to need to know that there's a desire for it. So if you want me to get a P.O. box so you can send me stuff, respond in the comments so that I know that there's actually an interest there. Yeah, that's all I got for you this week. So if, like me, you understand that the double standard of calling out Biden's mental decline and not calling out Trump's mental decline is just exactly that, a double standard, and thus not worthy of us as a country, as an electorate, then keep your powder dry and keep your quiet rage. Good night, my fellow Americans.